Welcome to Between the Lines. John Lofton here, along with my producer, Raven Lofton, also known as my wife. She is here, and we're going to have a good show today. So I hope you guys are really excited for this because I know I have been elated to know that now my audio settings are working. Now everything else is working. Let's just hope it stays that way. But we do have a good show for you guys today. And as always, I'm going to highlight what we're doing, especially since we're in beta. This is not the way the show will look and feel once we go live. We are working to get some quotes and bids for our graphics and our logo and hopefully get all that launched here before too long. That's kind of the goal. But nevertheless, we are excited and want to kind of get some feedback. So if you guys have feedback on the show, maybe you've seen some of the previous episodes, feel free to comment. We will try to read those more. That's actually what Raven's job is. She's going to click between the scenes here today. Raven, can we at least see your face once? I know she's shy on camera, but can we at least see it once? You should see guest cam. There, I talked her into it. She didn't want to go over. There. She quickly goes back. Anyway, she's going to be chiming in here if we ever get comments or whatever. But still feel free to do that, and we're going to try to make time for those as we can. I don't really know that microphone, do I? I got two microphones for no reason. What am I, the president? But anyway, so here's how we do things. So the first part of the show, we always tell a story, and I've got a good one for you guys today. And then the second part is I kind of highlight what my opinion is and maybe some research that I've done. And we kind of really turn this into sort of an editorial. And then we squeeze in comments and things like that. So today's title is A Christian's Perspective, a surprising viewpoint and perspective on prayer in school. And I'm going to open this up to just generally religion in school. Also, some people call it church and state. But I really want to focus on school. And kind of go over some viewpoints and all of that. If I had a live studio audience other than, just Raven, I would ask, how many people, when you were in school, did you guys ever pray in school? I know it was really big down south when I was growing up. They would still have prayer in school. You can't watch like a classic football like film movie and then not like have this like huddle before the game and they're praying and whatnot. And like, you look at, football athletes and stuff like that, even in high school, they say, oh, I thank God for this. I give God the glory for the success and for our team coming together. And, they have this sort of religious sentiment. And I guess I'm going to be speaking more generally than sports and prayer, but I will touch on it too. But then, like I said, the second half, we always just kind of go over the viewpoints because the point of this, all of this, and the reason I format the show this way, and I'm probably going to keep this format unless, I get some feedback against it, and some suggestions that maybe I open my eyes. So again, even if it's just the content of the show that you guys would like to see, some suggestions on, I would, be happy to hear them and definitely take them under consideration. But the reason I do it right now, my logic is if I can tell a story and I can show you guys, the research that I did on the subject, and give you that perspective, then even if you don't agree with me at the end of the day, then you at least understand me. And I think that's kind of the what's going on in the world. And I highlight this every week, and I probably will for a while until, the show takes off traction and everybody just kind of knows what to expect. But it is about trying to take two opposing viewpoints and find middle ground. It's kind of where the title Between the Lines came from, because I think there can be a lot of middle ground to be made on various polarizing issues. And I apologize for that. We will do better in the future about making sure our phones are on silent. So Raven, if you can, make sure your phone's on silent so we won't be disturbed during the show. All right. So, but that's kind of what I wanted to make a note of and let you guys know that that's why I do the show the way I do it. And that's why I'm planning on doing it that way. All right. So we'll go ahead and get in on the first thing. And again, like I said, feel free to comment. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So when I was a kid growing up, as I mentioned earlier, prayer in school was actually still very common. even in the 90s. And so it was one of those things, and it wasn't so much a group led prayer. It was more or less, okay, everybody bow your heads and pray. It wasn't that you were asked or required to pray to a certain deity, or philosophy, if you will, or theology, I should say, not philosophy, theology. It was just bow your head and pray. Or if you don't want to pray, meditate. That was kind of another word they started to use back then, even. I remember that, meditate. And it was usually right after we said the Pledge of Allegiance, which, of course, the Pledge of Allegiance has one nation under God, indivisible, justice for all. And, of course, I don't know how long ago it's been, wasn't that long ago, when they were talking about, taking under God, and I can't remember what they were trying to replace it with, but it's always been that way. But again, under God, yeah, I mean, everybody knows that under God, and it has a sort of Judeo-Christian sentiment on it. And this is not a religious show. I should also note that. If you've seen past episodes, sometimes we talk about COVID-19. Sometimes we talk about, just different issues. And that's kind of the idea here, is that we just really highlight. And my goal is also to show empathy for people with opposing viewpoints than my own. And I think that's also going to be really important for us to reach understanding. And that's also why I want you guys to comment. Even if you agree, let me know. What do you think? Because, I really want to know. I want to get that feedback, and really absorb it all in from you guys too. So, but like I was saying, when I was a kid, we would have those moments, and we would have that time allotted. And prayer in school went way, way back. You could think there was a case that went to the Supreme Court back in 1962, when essentially the First Amendment got expanded so that you couldn't have a government impose religion on a particular group. Like, it can't be imposition. It can't make rulings and judgments on from a government to its people. And largely in that extended then to all forms of government, both federal and state, local. It was a widespread, just blanketed everything. And that's really where this whole thing started, of where praying in school became, a no-no, or group sponsored or sanctioned prayer became forbidden in school. And the way it reads right now is kind of like at Wikipedia. Take that source for what you will. But I just like the way it was worded. And it basically said that if a student wants to pray on their own or read the Bible on their own, that is fine. But it can't be forced upon, because the idea is that it could increase peer pressure for those students who don't practice Christianity, we'll say. Then it could, obviously have an impact on them and their expression because of that peer pressure. I don't know how prevalent it was for maybe the larger population, but I know when I was a kid, I never really considered myself a Christian, even in elementary school. But it never really bothered me, and it just didn't. I mean, I wasn't committed to any religion at that point. First, second, third grade, those kind of years, really just wasn't. And so I think that is a I don't know. Maybe it's just a sign of the times. I guess from my perspective, when I was a kid, it didn't seem to bother anybody. My mom took us to church every once in a while, but my mom worked 3 jobs, so that usually meant working Sundays at McDonald's. She'd work Sunday at McDonald's. She'd work during the week as a manager for a medical bill collection company, and then she also worked at a bank too, doing some bookkeeping and that sort of thing. I don't remember exactly what her job was back then, but yeah, she worked several jobs, even fast food. So church and religion just never was a big part of my life growing up. And so being in school, just having the time, I was indifferent about it. I didn't feel pressured one way or another. I never felt teased because I maybe didn't fold my hands, or, I didn't sit with my head bowed and all that. I don't know. I never felt bad about it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is part of my argument today is how many students actually would feel like influenced by it. Now, that's a student's perspective. Now, as an adult now with a parent and a child in school, and now that I am, a professed Christian and give my life to Christ and try to follow in obedience to that as best I can. Yeah, I'd love for my kid to be able to pray in school. I don't really care. School can sanction it, but I'll tell you something that I am kind of opposed to, and I'll touch on this more, but I guess it ties into the story a little bit, because I wonder how he's going to feel in his world in school once he starts, supposed to start preschool this year, kindergarten next year, and I'm sure it's going to, prevail later on is, what about some of these worldly views like, evolution and things like that Christians don't partake in. We believe that, God created the heavens and earth and all the animals, he created them right then and there. There was no, we evolved from primordial organisms to people somehow. We believe that man was here shortly after the creation of the earth, with Adam and Eve. And honestly, I don't really feel qualified to go further than that as far as from a texture perspective. If you're really interested, Answers in Genesis, Ken Ham and the Creation Museum out in Kentucky. That's really your best resource if you're interested in that really deep dive into all that. Ken Ham, he authored that whole thing like as best as probably anybody could probably tackle, Genesis and the difference between how we can argue against evolution versus how we see things today. I am not that guy. I just believe it. I don't know. And even though I don't have the same facts and I can't talk as eloquently as he can or some other, people in church can, our elders and deacons that I get to see every day at my church, they could probably speak way more elegantly about it than I can and more factual and straightforward. For me, it was just a choice. What do I choose to believe? And that's just what I chose to believe. But going back to the story, as I grew up, that even became less and less. I remember one year, I think we did yoga as part of that time when I was in middle school. And you guys get the connotation for the culture on that. And I think that made me feel awkward. That was the first time, mostly because my version of a downward dog didn't look like anybody else's version of a downward dog. And so, but those rituals, right? I guess a lot of people consider yoga more of a stretch and meditation sort of thing, a way to get blood flowing and, use it as a stretching tool for your physical body needs. But no one ever really considers it a spiritual thing. Although I think there are a number of people that probably would. They'd probably say that, yeah, this is my spiritual release. This is how I clear my mind and become one with the world. And I'm not going to say that, okay, that doesn't work for you, because maybe it does. I don't see how. Man, my calf hurt. I can't do it. I can't do yoga. Raven's smiling over there. You sure you don't want to say something to that effect, Raven? No? Okay. I'll leave me alone for now. Have you ever done... Okay, you got to answer this. Have you ever done yoga?
Not a day in my life.
Not a day in your life. Okay. I have done yoga several times in my life. I don't enjoy it, but that's just me. I don't feel like I have the body type for yoga. They have dog yoga. They have yoga with farm animals now. I've seen that. I don't mean to talk down on it. It's just, it's a real thing. Like, that is a real thing. You could do yoga with farm animals. If that suits your fancy, cool. Does not suit mine. If I had to put my head anywhere near a pig's ass, I'm going to be a little upset about it. Sorry, I don't mean to cuss so much on the show, but the thought of it just like repulses me. It's not. If y'all have ever done farm yoga and really enjoyed it, cool. Comment, tell me about it. Enlighten me so that I can understand it. I just don't. But then again, if I was asked to do it and I said no, and everybody else was doing it, would I feel bad? No, I don't care. Maybe some people would, but is that care enough where you felt so peer pressure to do something that you didn't want to do that you're going to raise, a lot of, commotion about it and try to get it banned so that there'll never be farm yoga in school again? Not to say they would do farm yoga in school, but you get the idea. Like just something like that, where most people would say it's innocuous. Even Christians, I would imagine, don't really care one way or another about yoga. There's probably a lot of Christians who practice yoga. I'm sure there are. I'm not one of them, but I'm sure there are. But what I'm getting at is prayer in school, even if it is sanctioned by the school, is it, and I'm asking this as an actual open question. I have a viewpoint on it, and I'll get to it, and it's probably going to surprise you from the line of logic that you're hearing from me now. It's kind of the other thing I kind of want to do in the show is kind of lead you guys to one line of logic and then really give you the overall perspective once I compare things. And so that's just kind of what I'm at right now. I'm thinking about this from a perspective of a student or a teacher. And does it really impact them, having prayer in school, even if it is sanctioned, even if they don't take part? And then should it be the other way around? If there was a sanctioned like Islamic prayer time where you get, I don't know much, and I really mean no disrespect when I say this, but like when I think of Islamic prayer, I'm thinking of the rug that they have down, and they get down on their hands and knees and they spend time in prayer, and they have songs that they sing that I don't understand a lick of at all. But I've heard it, kind of like that idea, that call to prayer sort of thing. And you're right, I don't understand it because I can't. A week of research into the show, there's no way I could possibly understand all the religions of the world and how I would feel if I was asked to partake. I do know that I've been to a Catholic funeral before. Get down on your knees, get back up. Get down on your knees, get back up. There's a bar down on the floor near the back of the pulpit in front of you. Get down on your knees. And I guess I did it, but I did it out of respect. I mean, I don't know. I guess in my mind, because maybe I am open-minded enough to say, you know what? It doesn't reflect my viewpoints, but I'll respect yours enough to go through the motions of it, right? Because I want to be respectful, not because I necessarily believe it or want to cause a commotion and then not do it. I just kind of felt like it was a point of respect, but it doesn't really respect me. I'm just trying to respect you. Or it doesn't really affect me, but there have been enough people over time now that any really mention of prayer in school, any inclination that, of a group-led prayer, and then one student felt bad, and then the parent gets mad, and then complains to the school board, and then the coach gets fired. That's happened. It's just, I don't know. Is it worth it though? Like, and I'm going to get to this, like, I know in our home, we teach our kid about God and Jesus and all of that, but we do it within our own home. I don't expect the school to influence him spiritually one way or another. I do expect it to respect his teachings. Like when we talk about evolution versus creationism, we believe in creationism. We don't believe that, but one day he's going to be in an earth science class or a biology class, and they're going to talk about DNA or something like that, and he's going to be expected to answer a question on a test that would go against what we've taught him actually happened and how we were actually placed here. Not that DNA doesn't exist, but that our DNA is evolved from apes and all of that. And there might be some similarities, I'm sure. I can't really deny science, and it's not that I want to be anti-science with him, but it's just that if we want to somehow show, or if they want to somehow show and teach him that we came from basically a primordial organism to a human, and he's supposed to answer that yes or no, I want him to answer no, because that's how we believe. I believe that encroaches on his fundamental right to practice religion as he sees fit. But then again, if an Islamic person has a teaching that they were taught, that they teach their kids to believe, and then the school tells them, no, your test here says today that you have to answer this other way that you don't believe, that's where I feel like the real issue is here, rather than something that's optional, that's not measured in a grade, that's not measured in anything. And I really kind of jumped to my ending here, but that was basically my story in a nutshell, is that when I was a kid, whether we prayed or didn't pray made no difference to me personally, and I don't feel like it strongly influenced me enough where I went home to my mom and said, Mom, I want to go to church because we prayed in school today. I didn't do it. If you've had kids that do that, cool. What's hard about this subject, and I really wrestled with this, is I get from court decisions. That's a lot of what I was able to find from sources that I could truly take as mutual, is a lot of court sources and Supreme Court rulings and how all of those came to be. And I didn't really feel like it was worth going over and rehashing a lot of that, but I wanted you guys to know that I did look at that. I looked at these court rulings for and against church and state. And what's interesting though is I kind of came up with this thought is, public school, government funded school, should it have a Christian connotation? And I thought about this. I was thinking, okay, the government is not supposed to have a viewpoint on religion one way or another. That's our Constitution, right? That's our world, right? That's our body. It's not supposed to. And then I thought, even though I don't care one way or another if my kid gets prayer in school, I would like for him to. I wouldn't be mad if they did, but it doesn't offend me if they don't. Just like it wouldn't offend me if they did either. Because my kid's spiritual health should come from the home and come from the church that we go to every, Wednesday and Sunday. That's where it should come from. Not a public school. If we really wanted him to have a holistic Christian viewpoint on this, we should really figure out our finances and get him into a Christian K through 12 school. That is what we should do. Now, here's the dilemma too, is how do you do that? If you're a Christian parent, you really want your kid in a Christian school, but you can't afford the tuition, because if it was a public option school, then they would be bound under these Supreme Court rulings about church and state. But likewise, under no circumstances do I think any kid should be punished, made to feel bad, bullied, or coerced into their viewpoint on reading a Bible in school, praying as they wish in school, Christian or not. And I don't think that we should be as uptight about when our kids talk to each other about church and reading the Bible, because, well, hey, if an Islamic kid came up to my kid and talked to him about it, I guess I'd have to be open with that too then, wouldn't I? Because then that would make me a hypocrite. If I didn't want to have my kid come home and tell me that he was talking with a new friend that was Islamic, I shouldn't be mad about that, because then I would hope that the parent that my kid talks to about being a Christian shouldn't be mad and upset about it either. It goes both ways. So as much as I don't want my kid to be Islamic, because, we're Christian and we believe that that's Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the light, and there's no other way to the Holy Father but through him, and that he died for our sins and forgiveness. And in fact, next week, being today Palm Sunday and next week being Easter, I think that's probably a lot of why I chose this too, is just kind of leading up to that. I was thinking about those sort of things and the subject sort of came in my mind, but it's just, I guess I would have to be okay with that. But obviously, when he comes home and talks to him about it, okay, I would hope that, I'm able to teach him why we believe that faith would be incorrect, but not do it in a public sort of way where we condemn others. And then the other thing is, we want our child to understand that being a Christian doesn't mean you go out and flaunt it. You don't pray and have a Bible wide open in the middle of a courtyard and try to preach or doing something like that, because we want people to know us by our actions. We want them to know that we are Christians by the way we love one another. I want my kid to be the kid that goes up to the kid who just got his books knocked out of his hands or her hands. Either way, it doesn't matter. And picks them up and is kind and befriends the student that doesn't have friends. That's how we want him to show, that we care and that we love one another, regardless of their religious views. But I just don't feel that if there was a Christian football coach and led their team in prayer, if it was and I actually asked one of our pastors in church today, one of our elders, about this today, and I asked them what kind of like their synopsis, and they kind of said, well, it's just, I'm trying to think how I can summarize this, but it basically kind of went over this whole idea that it is our duty to show that we love one another by how we treat each other, and that we should always leave the door open. And I hope that makes sense for a lot of you guys, and it doesn't seem like I'm rambling on here. I'm just trying to think of a way that I can say this that's a little bit more respectful to all. And I think that there's a lot of Christians out there who would put a low eyebrow on somebody who practices a different faith. I don't think that's right, even if we wholeheartedly disagree. Because sometimes a Christian's natural inclination is to want to push that out a lot. And teachers may even be tempted to push that out a lot, even if they're not really supposed to. And sometimes it might be important to take a step back. Remember, we can't change a person's heart. Only God can. That's what we believe. And so I think that we have to understand that and be able to respect each other from there. But always extend the door open in case they have questions. And remember that it is okay to invite kids, to church, to their, to their kids' study group, whether that be like a laugh group or a Wana group, something like that. I think that those are important, and kids should be allowed to do that. And so what I'm trying to say is, and I'm wrapping this whole thing up because my producer's telling me that I got like about a minute left in the show today, because we are trying to keep a strict 30-minute time limit. But what I want to say too is that if a student happens to be part of a group in church that has prayer involved or reading of scripture involved, know that you should not take that as your kid's going to become a Christian because of that. That point, before they reach the age of being able to fully decide, should come from the home and from the parents. And to Christian parents who have children, and you maybe have a very strong viewpoint about homosexuality or about why Islamic's wrong, or even just something as simple as why Santa Claus isn't real, or is... Sorry, I know that gets into a whole different subject. We'll say that for Christmas, but just know that you should always teach your kids to be respectful of others, and only present, opinionated, or not really opinionated, but their viewpoint really when asked, and to always have a listening ear to others. And your kids are ultimately going to have to make their own decisions anyway. Even if our son, I hope that he becomes a Christian early on in life. I hope he makes that profession. But even if he doesn't, I have to understand that it's going to be ultimately his choice. Everybody has a choice. Remember that. You have a choice to either listen or not listen. And no one should lowbrow you for feeling that way. And I think you need to have some self-security if you do feel offended, just because somebody else or a larger group of people did. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'd love to follow up on this at some point in the future once the show gets out alive. Anyway, how much time do I got? 15 seconds. Cool. Like, subscribe. We will see you guys next week, hopefully, I might take a week off for Easter, but either way, we'll be back. Take care. Thanks for listening to Between the Lines. I'm John Lofton.